Testing, testing. Testing. Welcome to the Black Anarchist Podcast, a channel where critical thinkers come to learn and grow. Through pedagogical discussions, we challenge the status quo, conventional narratives, and present raw truth. I'm JC, author of Blame It On Address, the Manufacturing of Black Homophobia and Performative Masculinity. And today is going to be the last time that I use that introduction because I'm actually promoting my new project, which isn't a full book, but it's a pamphlet, which is currently available on Amazon. It's called The Black State Project, The Path to Sovereignty, Reparations, and Rebuilding Black Wall Street. I tried to do a series of live streams to try to explain it, but I really want to get this out to a broader audience because I'm actually trying to get people to support this project. And so I think in order to reach more people, it's going to be more effective for me to actually promote this pamphlet, which is heavily inspired by Judenstadt by Theodore Herschel. So I'm going to just read the description, which is available on Amazon. The Black question exists everywhere where Blacks live in perceptible numbers. For 400 years after the first enslaved Africans were forcibly brought to America, their descendants still face systemic oppression despite every attempt at reform. This pamphlet argues that the time for appealing to the conscience of the majority has ended. The only solution is democratic sovereignty through migratory capture. Why integration has failed. Despite decades of civil rights legislation, American descendants of slaves face worse conditions than during Jim Crow. And I'm talking specifically about economic conditions. Mass incarceration has created larger enslaved populations than chattel slavery. The racial wealth gap has tripled since the Civil Rights Act due to government-imposed barriers to entry, which interfere with the free market, allowing the state to determine economic winners and losers. Police kill Black Americans at 3 times the rate of non-Blacks, with 99% facing no legal consequences. The historical president. In the 1890s, Edward P. McCabe dreamed of creating America's first Black-controlled state in Oklahoma Territory. His all-Black towns proved that ADOS could govern effectively and build extraordinary wealth until civilized brutes destroyed Black Wall Street in 1921 to prevent Black political sovereignty. The mathematical solution. Democracy is majoritarian. ADOS represent 38% of Mississippi's population, closer to majority control than any state in America. With strategic migration of just 430,000, ADOS could achieve majority control over an entire state within a decade. The constitutional foundation. The Free State Project proved that 2,000 libertarians could reshape New Hampshire politics through coordinated migration. The right to travel is constitutionally protected. If libertarians can influence a state with 20,000 people, ADOS can control a state with 430,000. Why sovereignty enables real solution. Individual cash reparations will never work because reparations can only be paid to a sovereign, and because cash reparations without sovereignty would leave ADOS vulnerable to the same oppressive system. I tried to explain to you all before, under the social contract, the sovereign is the true master of all property. And so I don't know how many times I need to say this. Even if you were to get cash reparations, it's going to go right back into the same system that everybody's complaining about. So I keep hearing everybody talking about how they want cash reparations. And unfortunately, I just can't respect it. I don't respect it. I mean, because on the surface, you would think we want the same thing, but actually, it's not the same thing. You don't actually want any systemic change. You just want somebody to send you a check, and then you're okay with the way things are. So I personally don't respect that at all. We're not on the same page. If you're not asking for sovereignty, then I don't support cash reparations. I support cash reparations conditioned president upon getting sovereignty first. If we're not going to get a sovereign state, then I don't support cash reparations. Um, I don't think it's going to do anything. I understand that we are entitled to inherit from our ancestors' labor, but for me, it's not going to change anything. I'm still going to be oppressed. I still don't want to live under this oppressive system. So to each his own. I hear everybody really peddling. They're peddling the same narrative ad nauseum. Nobody's really saying anything original, and um, you're not going to get any results. After I read this, I'm going to read a comment that I got from somebody just yesterday. This pamphlet provides a detailed blueprint for achieving ADOS sovereignty in Mississippi. The strategy begins with phase-based county takeover, targeting areas where ADOS populations already exceed 80%. This plan includes economic development programs for historically disadvantaged communities. It establishes constitutional protections for community defense and self-governance. Finally, it creates federal negotiating leverage to demand nationwide policy changes as a condition for cooperation on federal initiatives. Learning from McCabe's fatal era. McCabe's communities had wealth and political organization, but lacked protection from civilized brutes turned violent. Modern ADOS sovereignty could control the institutions responsible for protection: state, police, National Guard, courts, and prosecutors. I did a whole video about the civilized brutes as a counterbalance to the term noble savage. So when I use these terms, I want y'all to know what I'm talking about. So if you didn't watch that video, you can go back. It's an archetype that they talk about how if you're not civilized, then you're what did Dickens say? That you're a prodigious, violent animal or something like that. So yeah, what Charles Dickens said is completely wrong. The people who are civilized are far more violent, and we saw that play out with Black Wall Street because they didn't like the fact that those people were doing better than them economically, so they decided to just burn the entire town down. Um, right, we're going to prevent them from happening again. We can rebuild Black Wall Street, but we need to get sovereignty first so that we can have some actual uh, protection. We can form private militias. We can control the National Guard, control the police force, and then we can rebuild Black Wall Street because there's not going to be the ability to tear it back down. So, benefits for all Americans. ADOS sovereignty could benefit the entire nation through economic development, crime reduction, and enhanced international credibility. Right? Because there are people who don't like their economic condition. They don't like where they live. This will be a utopia. This will be the place where you can actually move to and actually prosper. You can actually have some self-determination. You can raise your kids the way you want. You're not going to be dismissed because you don't have a majority, right? So your vote doesn't matter. There are a lot of people who don't vote because they don't believe their vote matters. Well, your vote will matter if you actually support this project, but to vote in this system as a minority, you're not going to have that much weight. So we got to start somewhere. And I was just on a panel yesterday, and nobody can really push back against it. They're just going to say, keep voting under this current system without having any comprehensive reform. No, we need to go back to the drawing board, look at the social contract, figure out how to maneuver around this system and do something different. Getting cash reparations and remaining under the same oppressive system is not going to work for me. It's a non-starter. The choice. The majority simply does not care about ADOS suffering. Let me emphasize that they don't care. They literally could not give two shits about what happened to your ancestors. They don't even care about what's happening to you right now. So you think you're going to get reparations from it? They're not going to support that. It's not. They're not going to support it. It's going to disadvantage them politically and economically. Why would they do that? It's not in their rational self-interest, right? Because it's what. Well, they'll support all these foreign wars. They'll support giving reparations to foreign countries that had nothing to do with their suffering, but they're not going to support it domestically. Um, we ha- we have to let me start that over. The majority simply does not care about ADOS suffering, and trying to convince them is pointless. We have to do this ourselves. We can continue as supplicants appealing to those who profit from our oppression, or we can seize democratic control through constitutional means. The Black State Project is the only pragmatic solution to the Black question. The mathematical logic of majoritarian democracy, the constitutional protection of the right to travel, and the proven success of similar migration movements make ADOS sovereignty in Mississippi achievable within a decade. The only question is whether we have the will to be free. Now, let me read this comment that I got from one of my supporters here. And I want y'all to, let me read it and then I'll comment on it. This was part 2 of the series that I did, basically making a case for a Black state. Of course, I got very few views, and I'm not sure why. I do know why. It's because you just want to check. You don't actually want to hear the minutia of how to actually get it. You just want to sit on your ass and wait for a check to be sent you in the mail. That's not. Nobody respects that, right? So let me read this comment, because this was a part of the series that I did. For what it's worth, as a white doctor, I really respect your intelligence and depth on this video, as well as a few other videos I've watched. Thank you for putting your time and thought into various videos, right? And I'm really glad that he pointed out that he's a white doctor, because if this would, I want y'all to let this sink in, right? As a white doctor, he respects what I'm doing, because he actually understands that what I'm actually trying to propose will meaningfully it will have a positive impact on our existence in America, right? And I think a lot of white people will respect that. What they don't respect is, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit back and wait for the government to send me a check. Even if you want reparations, you're still going to have to fight for it, right? You think they're just going to do it of their own volition? No. So they don't respect that. So this white doctor, which I'm so glad that he actually posted that comment, because I didn't even get that many responses, because I know why. Because it's boring. You don't want to hear the minutia of how to actually achieve it. You just want the check to be sent to you in the mail. But as this intelligent white doctor recognized, this is a pragmatic solution to the Black question. And I'm not sure why everybody's not jumping on board. Nobody has told me that I'm wrong. I have been advocating for this for a while now, by the way. I've been talking about how I support sovereignty over cash reparations for at least 3 years. And now I just finally decided to put a plan together, and then I'm going to actually start contacting people who I think can actually make this happen. The movers and the shakers of the community. There are a lot of people who just talk. They just want to siphon wealth and exploit the Black community. I'm not interested in those people at all. I don't think they have anything to contribute. And you know what? I'm not going to get anywhere promoted on YouTube. I'm going to have to actually go out and reach people and actually meet them where they are and actually promote this. I'm going to have to do the groundwork. I don't think I'm going to be the face of it, but I do have an idea who I think can help me to pull this off. So, let me see if there's anybody here before I keep going. Okay. Now, I'm going to go to the actual book, or it's not a book, it's a pamphlet. It's only 94 pages, but I'm not going to read the I'm not going to read the actual core of the pamphlet because if you want this information, you're going to have to go out and read it because I've given a gist of it in the videos and the live streams, but a lot of people were not interested. So if you want, people don't think knowledge is valuable unless they have to pay for it. So unfortunately, if you want the full plan, you're going to have to actually purchase the pamphlet. Now, let me just read the frequently asked questions. Um, Is this racial separatism? No. This is about demographic majority, not racial separation. Israel provides the relevant precedent. Jewish people created a state where they hold majority control after centuries of persecution, but Israel includes Arabs, citizens, Druze, Christians, and others who participate in civic life. Similarly, an ADOS controlled Mississippi would welcome all residents who contribute positively to the community while ensuring ADOS political leadership. This isn't about creating an all black state or excluding other populations. It's about having one state in the United States with an ADOS majority, which is entirely reasonable given that ADS represents 13% of the national population, but have never controlled any state government. We're seeking majority political control in one state out of 50, not racial segregation. How will this affect current non-ADOS residents? Current residents who contribute positively to their community will benefit from improved governance, economic development, and infrastructure investment. The economic development programs target historically disadvantaged areas, which means all residents in these areas benefit from business development, job creation, and infrastructure improvements. Non-ADOS residents will experience better schools, safer communities, economic opportunities, and more effective government services. The goal is to demonstrate that ADOS can govern more effectively than current establishments, which benefits everyone regardless of their background. Those who oppose community development or engage in discriminatory behavior would face consequences, but law abiding residents who support community progress will prosper. Why is sovereignty more important than cash reparations? Cash reparations don't address systemic oppression, they only provide temporary individual relief while leaving the oppressive systems intact. Sovereignty addresses root causes by giving ADOS complete control over all three branches of government: executive, legislative, and judiciary. Gosh, my book just crashed. My pamphlet just crashed. What just happened here? This is a disaster. Sorry, y'all. I don't know why that just happened. Let me see if I can get back to where I was. Gosh. Okay. Okay, here we are. This isn't about controlling police departments. This is about having complete sovereignty over every institution that affects AVOS lives. With executive control, we appoint state agency heads, control state police, and direct government enforcement priorities. With legislative control, we write the laws, set budgets, and determine policy priorities. With judicial control, we interpret laws, oversee criminal justice, and ensure constitutional protections are actually enforced. Judicial control is particularly crucial because the judiciary issues law licenses and controls entry into the legal profession. We can remove the barriers to entry and ensure the legal system represents and reflects its population. When ADOS control the courts, we eliminate the biased licensing schemes that exclude qualified ADOS lawyers, judges, and legal professionals while assuring that our communities have legal representation that understands and advocates for our interests. Police brutality continues because ADOS don't control police departments or the prosecutors who refuse to charge killer cops, or judges who dismiss cases, or the legislatures who write qualified immunity laws. Educational failure persists because ADOS don't control school boards or state education departments or legislatures that underfund schools or courts that allow discriminatory discipline policies. Economic discrimination continues because ADOS don't control business licensing boards or government contracting offices or courts that dismiss discrimination lawsuits or legislatures who write laws protecting discriminatory practices. Cash reparations would still leave ADOS subject to hostile state governments that control every institution affecting our lives. We would remain vulnerable to police violence, educational neglect, economic exploitation, and judicial bias because we would still lack the power to control the executive agencies that enforce laws, the legislatures that write the laws, and the courts that interpret laws. Complete sovereignty eliminates oppression by transferring control of all oppressive institutions to ADOS communities. When we control the entire state government, we control every mechanism of power that currently oppresses us. This is about a total institutional control, not partial reform. How will an ADOS controlled state be governed differently? The critical difference is that government the critical difference is government's philosophy. If ADOS simply replicate existing oppressive systems, will achieve the same oppressive results regardless of who's in charge. And let me just comment on that because there's an African country which has passed legislation to disenfranchise the LGBT community. So basically, you're still playing into the hands of white supremacy. You're doing the same dirty work. We're not going to create a system that mirrors the current system that we already have. We're not going to oppress people. We're not going to oppress the LGBT. We're not going to tell women they can't get an abortion. We're not going to use the state to oppress our own people. So we're going to do things completely different. This is not your opportunity to do the dirty work of the current system. So for those of you who do want to oppress your own people, this is not going to be a project that's for you. We're not going to use the coercive power of the state to oppress ADOS. The goal is creating limited government that advances ADOS interests while respecting individual rights and not creating new forms of paternalistic control. Which, by the way, I'm going to contact the libertarians because I think they probably will support this because they have New Hampshire. But you know what? This could be an alternative state where they can actually have a limited government for those who don't want to move to New Hampshire. The weather is great in Mississippi. There's a lot of economic opportunities. And if they're going to help me to bring this to and make it a reality, then I'm going to take whatever help I can get. I would prefer to get support from the ADOS, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. So I'm going to do whatever I have to do to actually make this happen. The principle is proportionality. Government authority must be balanced with government responsibility. If government wants to regulate private conduct, it must provide the social services that make such regulation legitimate. Don't regulate abortion without providing comprehensive health care, child care, and family support. Don't criminalize drug use without providing treatment and rehabilitation services. Don't regulate professional licensing without ensuring equal access to education and certification. Government has champagne taste with beer money. It wants extensive control without assuming corresponding responsibilities. An ADOS controlled state would reject this approach. Either government provides comprehensive services that justify its authority, or it limits its authority to match its actual capacity to serve citizens. That's a crucial part, by the way, because you're going to have to put your money where your mouth is. You don't get to impose regulations on people unless you're actually going to pay for it. Is this legal? Yes. The constitutional right to travel and democratic participation are fundamental rights. The Free State Project established clear precedent for coordinated political migration. Any attempts to prevent ADOS political participation would violate federal rights, laws, and constitutional protections. How much will this cost individual families? Many families will save money. The median Mississippi home costs $130,000 versus $400,000. In majority metropolitan areas, lower cost of living, no state income tax on military retirement, and economic opportunities in a growing state create financial advantages. Community investment and funds and business development will support families during transition. What about federal government opposition? This strategy operates within existing constitutional frameworks. Federal opposition would require violating constitutional rights to travel and vote, creating legal and political problems for any administration. An ADOS controlled state would work cooperatively with federal agencies while advocating for ADOS interests through proper governmental channels. How do we coordinate 430,000 people? Modern digital platforms enable coordination and Modern digital platforms enable coordination impossible in McCabe's era. Social media, mobile apps, and online organizing tools provide unprecedented coordination capacity. The pledge system creates assurance contracts where people commit to act only if sufficient others also commit, reducing individual risk while ensuring collective success. What if this fails? We have tried everything else. This deserves a try. This is something we have never done before. We have never controlled a state. Controlling a state represents a real threat to the system, which is why it will be resisted. And this is the reason why Black Wall Street was torn down, by the way. A lot of people want to talk about the economic piece, but there was also a political component that they didn't want a state with a Black majority. So that is the real motivation behind the destruction of Black Wall Street. But even if it fails, the threat of us achieving this will shake up the system and force changes that benefit ADOS regardless. I want you to understand that even if we're not able to pull this off, they're going to pay so much attention to this that they will have to reshape national policy, because at this what I want y'all to know is that you're not a threat. Voting is not a threat. This appealing to their moral conscience, that's not a threat. You're not, I mean, what they care about is power, and you're not actually challenging the power structure. Even running for office is not a legitimate threat to the power structure. You need to have sovereignty, because don't work within their system. You need to usurp a state within their federalist system. And then you will actually have real power. You will actually be a real threat. Even if you don't pull it off, it's going to still it's going to present a threat to the entire system, because they're going to, I guess what I'll say is, even the fact that you're even attempting to do this is going to be free promotion. They're probably going to attack me personally, which is why I shouldn't be the face of it, because I do have a lot of baggage. But they do recognize, they will respect this, because they always talk about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Stop whining, crying, get over it. Okay, if you're telling us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, this is what pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps looks like. This is us trying to govern ourselves. We're not just whining, asking for money. We're trying to actually fix problems without relying on the majority to fix it for us. This strategy is very low risk with high reward. The only way we can fail is if we don't try. The risk of failure is lower than continuing current approaches. Individual cash reparation campaigns have failed for 60 years. Electoral politics within majority white jurisdictions provide token representation without meaningful power. Economic integration without political protection leaves ADOF wealth vulnerable to destruction, as occurred with Black Wall Street. Even partial success would provide more ADOS political control than currently exists anywhere in America. Counties and congressional districts under ADOS control would demonstrate effective governance while building towards state-level influence. The mere credible threat of achieving state control would force the federal government and other states to negotiate more seriously with ADOS interests than they do now. Success would create a model that could be replicated in other states with significant ADOS populations. Failure would still leave us better positioned than we are now, having built organizational capacity, demonstrated political seriousness, and forced national attention to ADOS sovereignty as a legitimate political option. Why did you write this pamphlet? I wrote this pamphlet out of frustration with systemic oppression in the absence of effective solutions to address it. Through careful analysis, I concluded that sovereignty represents the essential prerequisite for escaping oppression and achieving genuine political power. I became increasingly disillusioned with those who articulate valid criticisms of existing systems while failing to propose actionable alternatives. This pamphlet represents my attempt to bridge the gap between analysis and implementation. My hope is that readers will not merely consume these ideas, but will recognize their practical viability and take concrete steps towards implementation. This work draws intellectual inspiration from three primary sources: Theodore Herzl's The Jewish State, Edward P. McKay's visionary attempt to establish a black state in Oklahoma, and the contemporary success of the Free State Project in New Hampshire. How will you protect freedom and individual rights? I will call for a state version of the Ninth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. However, this will have stricter enforcement. Our rights do not come from the government. The Ninth Amendment is a rule of construction. The government does not create rights. The Constitution is only an enumeration of certain rights, but we retain the rights we had under common law. Rights which aren't enumerated will still be protected. The state will have no general police powers. The state will only be able to act based on express authority. No branch of government will be able to act based on unenumerated general police powers. Rules by the judiciary will not be able to change substantive law simply by passing rules while claiming inherent authority. I want y'all to understand how groundbreaking this will be, because a lot of the tyranny that we're subjected to is not through legislative acts. It's actually through judicial acts that they pass these rules. And because most people don't know about this, most people don't pay attention to the judiciary. They pay attention to the governor, the president, the legislature. The judiciary is far more threatening to your freedom than any of these other branches. We have judicial supremacy. The courts have the final say on all things. And so to limit the court's power to just pass rules based on inherent authority would be a huge game changer. A lot of people are not going to recognize this, and that's fine. I don't expect you to understand how the legal system actually works. But if you're going to push back for me, at least you know what I mean, actually, at least have an informed opinion about how it actually works. Because a lot of the oppression is coming from the judiciary. It's not coming from the executive or legislative branch. So individual rights will belong to individuals and will not be put to a public vote. The government will exist to protect life, liberty, and property. It will have limited authority and will not control its citizens like children. The guiding principle will be the principle of self ownership. You own your life and you own your body. Controlling the state will be a means of protecting individual sovereignty. What will be the What will the economic model look like? The general goal is to have an economy which is self sufficient and self sustainable. The objective is to have strong local economies which can sustain themselves without relying on the federal government and can withstand disruptions in a global market. We should produce our own goods and services locally while also exporting goods to other states and nations. Um, this is a problem right now because none of our economies are self-sufficient. We're completely dependent on the global market. If there's a disruption in the global market, we're all screwed. The economy is going to collapse because we're all tethered together. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to produce our own goods. So even if the economy collapses, we can still survive because we can establish a bartering system, right? Um, when money becomes worthless because we produce our own goods, well, guess what? I'm going to give you some tomatoes in exchange for you changing my oil, or I'm going to give you a product. I don't know what it is. I made I made a basket. I made some furniture. We're going to trade that. So even when the US dollar collapses, we're still going to survive because we actually produce our own goods and services. Key challenges that will need to be addressed include education and workforce development to ensure residents have skills for emerging industries, infrastructure improvements and transportation, broadband and utilities to support business development, access to capital for startups and small businesses, particularly for ADOS entrepreneurs, brain dead prevention by, I'm sorry, brain drain prevention by retaining college graduates through attractive career opportunities. The focus will be on diverse economic sectors, agriculture, manufacturing, technology, and services that can provide employment across all skill levels while creating wealth that stays within the community rather than being extracted to outside interests. Um, I don't know if y'all know what brain drain is, but it's basically like you educate people, right? So a lot of people go to college and then they leave the state, right? So no, we're going to have incentives for you to stay in the state. You're going to go to an ADOS college, or you're going to bring your skill set, and um, you're going to be motivated to stay in the state because this state is going to be fundamentally different from other states. You're going to have opportunities in the state that you don't have in other states. How will professional licensing be different in an ADOS controlled state? Current occupational licensing schemes are facially race neutral but have a disparate impact on ADOS, systemically excluding us from lucrative professions even after obtaining required education. These licensing requirements often rely on culturally biased examinations and subjective character and fitness evaluations that bear little relationship to professional competence but serve as gatekeeping mechanisms. Oh gosh, it just crashed again. This is starting to frustrate me. And I'm almost finished, but I this thing just keeps on freezing or crashing. I should have downloaded it first. Let me see if I can scroll back to it. Crap. Okay, here we are. The establishment claims to want a meritocracy, but the only valid meritocracy is the free market where success depends on one's ability to serve consumers effectively. Occupational licenses is not uh, meritocracy. It's state interference which government it's state interference in which government bureaucrats determine winners and losers rather than allowing market forces to reward competence. Through these regulations, states destroy people's lives by preventing qualified individuals from practicing their chosen professions based on arbitrary criteria that have nothing to do with their ability to serve consumers. The real goal of occupational licensing is not to protect the public, but to create artificial scarcity of services in order to engage in economic protectionism for current practitioners, what economists call rent-seeking behavior. This benefits the dominant society by allowing them to charge higher prices due to reduced competition, but it also harms ADOS communities because we lack access to these services due to artificially inflated costs. When licensing boards restrict the number of practitioners, they drive up prices while reducing services available. This creates a dual harm. ADOS professionals are excluded from lucrative fields, while ADOS communities pay higher prices for services or go without them entirely. This system protects incumbent practitioners' profit at the expense of both aspiring professionals and consumers who need affordable services. I'm not sure if y'all know what I mean by this. I'm not just. Let me just give two specific examples of two fields that you don't have access to. You don't have access to healthcare because the artificial scarcity has driven up the cost of medical services. You don't have access to legal services because their artificial scarcity has driven up legal fees to $500 an hour. So once you remove the barriers to entry, you have a free market system. And I'm not going to say an entire. I would like a free market, but a lot of people think there should be some restriction. Um, at the very least, it's going to be based on minimum competency. You're not going to have a high stake examination that's just going to destroy people's lives. If you want to practice medicine, if you want to practice law, then everybody's going to have that opportunity. And a lot of people are going to be attracted to this to support this project because of the economic opportunities that you're going to have the opportunity to pursue your dreams. The state is not going to determine winners and losers. An ADOS controlled state government would reform professional licensing to focus on actual competency rather than artificial barriers. We would use psychometrically validated assessments. Then um, we would use validated assessments that demonstrate content validity and criterion reliability. I talked to y'all before about that. That all standardized tests are supposed to go through psychometrics, where you basically have psychological experts that interview current practitioners and they determine the actual skills used in the profession. And then the exam is supposed to match the skills that are actually used in that profession. A lot of these standardized tests are not, they don't use psychometrics. It's completely arbitrary. It's really designed to keep people out, to create an artificial scarcity. It has nothing to do with competency. They want to, if you ask them to produce their psychometrics, they don't have it. And if you don't have a psychometric, then the entire exam, the entire licensing scheme is invalid. Um, Meaning the test actually measures skills needed for professional practice rather than actual knowledge unrelated to job performance. However, standardized testing would not be the only factor in licensing decisions. We would also consider how applicants plan to serve community needs, their commitment to addressing underserved populations, and their understanding of local community challenges. This holistic approach ensures that licensed professionals contribute to community development rather than simply extracting wealth from communities they don't understand or serve. The goal is eliminating barriers that exclude qualified ADOS professionals while maintaining standards that protect public welfare and ensure affordable access to essential services. Current licensing boards often use discretionary authority to exclude ADOS applicants through pretextual character evaluations while accepting less qualified candidates who fit cultural expectations. Reform licensing would focus on demonstrated competence and community service rather than subjective assessments that perpetuate exclusion rather than they perpetuate exclusion and artificial scarcity. Is this giving special treatment to ADOS? No. This is about general economic development that happens to benefit ADOS due to demographic concentration. The programs target economically distressed areas, rural communities, and historically underperforming districts, not race specific categories. Since ADOS are concentrated in these areas due to historical settlement patterns and discriminatory policies, they benefit disproportionately from race neutral economic development initiatives. Right, I was trying to figure out how to get around this. The lineage space argument is not going to work. The only way this is going to work is that if you already have a demographic concentration. The only way you're going to be able to benefit from this is to actually live in the state. There's no way to just give benefits to people who live all across the country. You're going to have to actually live in Mississippi to reap these benefits, but there's going to be financial incentives for you to migrate to Mississippi. These are the same types of programs that already exist nationwide: rural development, small business support, infrastructure investment in underserved areas, and educational funding for low-performing districts. The difference is that an ADOS-controlled state would prioritize these programs and ensure that they effectively reach the communities that need them most. All residents in targeted areas benefit from improved infrastructure, better schools, business development opportunities, and enhanced government services. The programs don't exclude anyone based on race. They include everyone in economically disadvantaged areas while addressing the geographic legacy of historical discrimination. Who do you expect will oppose this project? The people most likely to oppose this will be members of our own community, the grifters and charlatans. They are not interested in liberating our people. They are only interested in their own individual gains at our expense. They will not support this project. Instead, they will tell you to continue begging for cash reparations, knowing that it won't happen, and never coming up with an actual plan to achieve it. Don't trust these people. They profit from keeping ADOS communities dependent and hopeless because it maintains their position as intermediaries who claim to speak for us while delivering nothing. These individuals will not want to be part of this hard work. They will not be they will not want to be part of the hard work of building sovereignty. But if we make this happen without them, they will try to join in later while asking for their cut after all the difficult organizing was done without their help. They will attempt to position themselves as leaders of a movement they oppose when it required sacrifice and commitment. Real liberation requires rejecting these false prophets who have led our communities in circles for decades. They offer complaints without solutions, demands without strategy, and rhetoric without results. The Black State Project threatens their grift because it offers concrete action that would make their performative activism obsolete. This is why the project must be led by serious people committed to actual results rather than those who profit from perpetual grievance without resolution. The test of genuine leadership is willingness to do the work when success is uncertain, not jumping on board after others have proven the concept works. Any ADOS investment, let me read the question first. Won't this create backlash? Any ADOS investment creates backlash from those who benefit from oppression. The advantage of this approach is constitutional protection and federal legal frameworks that make violent suppression difficult. Unlike McCabe's era, federal civil rights laws, voting rights protection, and hate crime legislation provide legal tools that did not exist in the 1890s. Successful governance and economic development in ADOS controlled areas would demonstrate competence while building political support from residents who benefit from effective leadership, regardless of their racial background. Now, let me see if there's anybody here before I end this live stream. Oh, there's nobody here. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Maybe y'all can catch the replay, or if not, you can at least purchase the pamphlet. The pamphlet is actually available on Amazon, and I also posted it in the description. So look forward to it being released on Amazon on the 19th of September. And thank you all for your support.